Hi, everyone. Welcome to GoLeanSixSigma.com's webinar. Thanks for spending some quality time with us here today. Hundreds of people have registered for this webinar, and we're really excited that you're all here. Lean and Six Sigma are the go-to improvement methods used by leading organizations all over the world to delight customers, minimize costs, develop better teams, and improve the way organizations operate. Every month, we craft webinars for you, our global community, that simplify the concepts and tools of Lean and Six Sigma so that you can understand and apply them more easily and be more successful. Today's webinar is titled Executive Overview, the Power of Lean Six Sigma. I'm Elizabeth Swan, and I'm a managing partner at GoLeanSixSigma.com. And today's presenter is also a managing partner at GoLeanSixSigma.com, my colleague, the wonderfully talented, innovative, and consummately passionate about learning, Tracy O'Rourke. Welcome, Tracy.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everybody.
A little background on Tracy. She's a co-host of the Just-in-Time Café podcast. She's my co-author of the Problem Solvers Toolkit, and she's also an instructor at UC San Diego in Lean Six Sigma. She's a master black belt, a consultant, a coach, a trainer. She began her career at GE, and for 20 years, she's helped leading organizations like Motorola, BP, Cisco, State of Washington, and many others to successfully apply Lean Six Sigma to achieve their goals. When she's not doing all of that, she's living in San Diego with her husband and her two boys. Aren't you, Tracy?
And our dog, Bailey.
And her dog, Bailey. I don't want to forget Bailey. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session, but please feel free to ask questions anytime by entering them into the chat area. There is a Q&A box, but we're asking you to use chat. There's also a question area. So we're using the chat. We welcome you to participate. So we'll ask you to vote in some polls or to answer some questions. And if you don't get to answer your questions during the webinar, we'll post all your answers in the Go-Getters forum. So you can see them there. A copy of the slides, this is key. A copy of the slides will also be available in the webinar post on our website. So you will have access to those. If you'd like to become a member of the forum, we'll share more on that at the end of the webinar. Please join us for our first activity, which is sharing where you're from. There's hundreds of people registering for this webinar, and people our learners are from all over the world, so we want to know where you are. So type in the chat section where you're joining us from today. We want to find out how late you're up or how early. So let's take a look there. Let's see, we've got, well, already I saw France. That was Fabienne from France. And we've got Elizabeth in New Jersey, David in Chattanooga. We've got Dieka in Kingston, Jamaica. Welcome. We've got Diana in Indianapolis and Guelph in Ontario, or no, Lloyd in Guelph, Ontario. Let's see, we've got Debashi from India. Bettina is joining from the Ivory Coast of Africa. Welcome, Bettina. Wow, we've got a really nice spread here, Tracy.
Very nice.
Yeah. All right, we know your time's valuable, so let's get started. Over to you.
Well, thanks for that warm introduction, Elizabeth. As always, I'm happy to be here with all of you from all over the world. Thank you for joining. As we've said, I've been with GoLeanSixSigma.com since its inception, and we founded GoLean Six Sigma with a clear purpose. We want to revolutionize the way people learn process improvement, making it easy for everyone, everywhere to build their problem-solving muscles. And we've got three core values that really help us stay focused on our purpose, and that is cultivate community. We want to create an inclusive and positive space where people around the world can connect with each other and learn and grow with Lean Six Sigma. We have a servant's heart, so at the core, we are here to be of service to others and guides to encourage people's success. And finally, we do have a trailblazing spirit. We want to be able to teach and educate differently. We want to have the courage to challenge and inspire each other, because we want your experience and the way you build problem-solving muscles to be awesome. So that's really our goal, and that's one of the reasons why we offer these free webinars every month, because it does serve our purpose, what we're trying to accomplish. And thankfully, a lot of people agree with our purpose and our values, and they're doing business with us. This is just a partial list of our, I don't know, even over 10,000 customers now, I believe. And these are just, you can see, are online companies, they're brick and mortar companies. There's various industries and sectors. We have private and public organizations and all kinds of industries like service or transactional services or non-manufacturing or manufacturing, government, education, military, all different kinds of businesses, because guess what? This is problem solving, and we're building problem solving muscles. And what company doesn't have problems to solve? So that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And our goal today is really to talk and give an executive overview of what really Lean Six Sigma is and why organizations are implementing Lean Six Sigma from an executive perspective, because sometimes we get a little focused on what Six Sigma is, and we spend a lot of time explaining that. We spend weeks in training explaining what Lean Six Sigma is, but sometimes we don't talk enough about why organizations should do it. And it can be sometimes not clear why organizations should be implementing Lean Six Sigma, especially for leaders and executives. I'm actually surprised how many people still haven't heard of Lean Six Sigma, although I also think it's because people say or call it different things. They'll call it operational excellence or being operationally efficient, those kinds of things. So I think that could be one reason. So really, this is our agenda today. And some of our learning objectives are really going to be why are organizations implementing Lean Six Sigma, why leaders should support it, how Lean Six Sigma reduces what we call the cost of poor quality. So this, again, is one of the major reasons why organizations are implementing Lean Six Sigma, but not the only one. And then we're going to talk about differentiating a little bit between hard and soft dollar savings as a part of that. And then we're going to spend some time talking about leader missteps with Lean Six Sigma, some of the things that I would say are learnings that we're hoping people will avoid that can be painful for not only the leader, but also the people that this person is leading. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about what Lean Six Sigma is. And I'm not going to go into great detail about it like we normally do when we're talking about introductions for Lean Six Sigma. We're just going to really talk about what it is in a nutshell. So what is it for? Ultimately, every organization, all organizations deliver their products and services by process. There's a process in order to deliver these products or services, no matter what it is. If you're a call center, there's a process that's going to happen for the customer to call in, and that call is being taken, and there's a process that's going to be occurring on the phone with the call taker. So that in its basic sense is a process. It could be the process of going to get something to eat. Everything is delivered by processes. And so I don't care what industry it is, healthcare, education, government, nonprofit, military, private sector, every organization delivers products and services. And often those processes, unfortunately, are not working perfectly, sometimes not even optimally. And so really it's up to teams of people to diagnose process issues, root causes, and effectively correct them so that things work better. But the bad part is these are not skills people were hired for in particular. They actually have a different skill like accounting or hiring people, HR. So these are the reasons why people are paid to do certain functions in the organization. But a critical and necessary skill that people need is how do you adjust when things aren't working so well in the process? And how do we make sure that organizations can thrive and respond effectively to change? And so that's really giving your employees the skills to make things better is a huge skill and actually in quite demand. We're seeing a lot of job resumes and people saying that people want these skills when they hire employees. So ultimately, what is Lean Six Sigma? It does fall under what we call the umbrella of process improvement, looking at a process and making it better. So we often hire people with skills to work in processes like accounting, like the HR process of hiring someone or firing someone, unfortunately. But we do hire people for those skills to work in a process. But we also need them to be good at working on a process. And unfortunately, people don't have those skills built in. As a matter of fact, some people are really bad at it. And so we want to help them get better with that. And so that is ultimately, and why are people not good at it? Well, because they're spending most of their time in a job working in the process, and they don't spend that much time working on it for whatever reason. Either they don't have time or they're not allowed to. And so guess what? Their muscles, their problem-solving muscles aren't as strong as we would like them to be, just like anything that you do intermittently. And so that's ultimately the challenge. So we really want to make sure that people have those skills to work on that process. And it isn't just skills, but it's also mindsets and behaviors and how we collaborate with coworkers. You know, I don't know if any of you out there have worked in a situation where people didn't work well together. There's a lot of, you know, high blame and territorial areas, and there wasn't a promotion of collaboration across groups or departments, those kinds of things. So that could be really unfortunate. And so we really want to promote process improvement skills as well as working in a culture for that to thrive and flourish. But ultimately, Lean Six Sigma is a powerful combination. And again, it's tools to help people. And again, like we said, Lean Six Sigma is a name for it, but there are other names like operational excellence, quality improvement, continuous improvement. Those are all things that people call it. But in a nutshell, it's tools to help people look at waste in a process, reduce variation in processes, and actually just make things work better. That's really what Lean Six Sigma is in a nutshell. So now that we've spent a little time explaining what it is, now we can talk about why. What are some of the reasons why organizations are so focused on Lean Six Sigma? There have been many organizations that have been using Lean Six Sigma, large organizations for decades. You know, General Electric is one of them. As an example, I worked there in the 90s and they're still doing process improvement. You know, Solar Turbines, Caterpillar, there's so many large companies that are doing process improvement. And so let's talk a little bit about why. And these are the key areas we're going to be talking about. Efficiency, you know, how do we make things work better, more efficiently? So that is a huge category. Costs of poor quality, reducing that. We'll talk and spend some time on what that really looks like. Improving customer experience. What company doesn't want to do that? I mean, does any company out there say, no, we make our customers happy enough. We're not gonna try anymore. And then finally, Lean Six Sigma does strengthen an organization. So if you're looking to have an agile organization that it can respond well to change, Lean Six Sigma is definitely an initiative that can help with that. So we're going to talk about those pieces. So most people understand what we mean by efficiency. You know, how do we make things more efficient? How do we build capability or build capacity to do more? That is typically an example, but it can also just mean that things are operating a little better. So in this example, it's talking about doctors. And before processes were improved, a doctor could only maybe see 4 patients successfully in an afternoon or in a day. And after improvements, this might be a result that now a doctor could see 9 patients successfully in a day. Well, what would be the result of that? I mean, are we just making them work harder and faster? Well, the goal is we want to make the process easier. So it could be, and these are projects we've seen in some of our classes, you might streamline the paperwork that is completed after seeing a patient. So, you know, we hear that all the time. We hear salespeople complaining that there's too much paperwork and when they have a sale, and that they're spending way too much time processing an order. So guess what? That means they can't sell more because they're too much in the process of creating the order and processing the order. In this case, the same thing. Maybe there's too much paperwork that has to be completed in between seeing patients. Or maybe the systems, there's too many redundant systems to process paperwork or process things like medications. Or maybe, we've seen this a couple of times, maybe there's better scheduling of patient appointments. So we've actually seen some projects that were focused on reducing cancellations for appointments and having better turn up and show up rates for these appointments. And so guess what? If you can see more people that can help a lot. So these are just this is one example, and there are so many processes that could affect and improve this measure or this outcome. And I don't care, it doesn't have to be healthcare. It could be, this is just this particular example. The point is that by implementing improvements and process improvement, all these processes that are involved have an effect on a measurable outcome, no matter what the process is. And so you just have to figure out what that process is and how do you make it better? What defines success and how do you make it better? That's really what we're talking about with efficiency. And if there isn't a focus on increasing efficiency, doing things better, naturally things can break down and have friction and be reduced to chaos. And that ultimately creates a swamp, if you will, for the cost of poor quality to occur. And so, you know, inefficient processes is sort of a pre-indicator of things not being very good on the quality front, potentially. And so let's talk a little bit about the cost of poor quality and what that means. So what does that mean? It's really the negative outcomes from a process that has waste or inefficiencies or a product with defects in it. And if you think about it, there's a lot of examples in the news that you've probably seen that are pretty significant examples. So for example, in 1986, NASA's space shuttle, the Challenger, launched and exploded 73 seconds after liftoff. And that was horrible. And what was the reason for that? Well, ultimately, after some root cause analysis, they found out that it was an O-ring seal that had been defective. 7 people died. The financial risk was over $1 billion. And the cost to fix the O-ring was a few $100,000. But for whatever reason, it didn't get fixed. It was the cost. And so that was the cost of poor quality. Very expensive. Another example is Toyota. Even though Toyota invented Lean and created Lean, you know, they had a situation in 2009 with an emergency recall of 9 million cars due to defective brakes and problems with floor mats. You probably remember that. And unfortunately, that led to unintended acceleration of the car, and 52 people died with a financial loss of $5.5 billion. And there was some speculation around Toyota's shift in their strategic focus away from quality and focused on growth. So they were wondering, how did this happen? And that was some of the speculation. But they ended up recalling production of 8 cars as a result of that. And so, you know, what was the reason for that? What was the reason for that cost of poor quality? Now it's very expensive. And I'm going to share in a little bit, you know, when you have external failures that reach the customer, those are the most expensive. And if you don't have quality top of mind or method to improve quality, you're going to have a higher likelihood of having some sort of external failure. And then finally, Samsung Galaxy Note 7 batteries caused the phone to overheat and catch fire. I remember that I was seeing that these types of phones were banned from being on planes because of this. And ultimately, what was the cause? Well, they failed to test if they worked before manufacturing, and because they were trying to get ahead of the market, and because they knew Apple's iPhone 7 was going to be coming out, so they cut corners. And it cost them $5 billion and customer confidence. So testing and inspection would have cost a fraction of that. So being more preventative, being more proactive would have been better. So obviously these are very highly visible failures that really have made these organizations poster children for the cost of poor quality. Unfortunately, it costs them a great deal. And these examples are a little extreme, you might be thinking, but the bottom line is most organizations have lots of opportunity to reduce poor quality, and they don't always have a method to do that, to promote that or make it a common language across the organization. So you may argue about the likelihood of having a catastrophe like one of these in your organization, but you can argue that many organizations have some opportunity with quality. And so, So a lot of these come up in what we call visible costs or hidden costs. So a lot of times if you look around, if you really want to know what the cost of poor quality is, I'm not going to go into this, formula and how to do that, but conceptually, we have kind of typical quality costs that make up about 4 to 10% of sales. And those are things that we track, like rework or scrap, rejects or warranty, any of those things. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Typically, there's hidden costs below the waterline that we don't necessarily capture anywhere, or that we don't see. It could be expediting costs, like we screwed up, your company screwed up, now we got to get that product out to the customer, and we got to do it fast. So we have slow processes, or we're paying for that expedited delivery. We're wasting supplies. There might be change orders that were happening, so there could be a lot of rework happening that's expensive in any process. And then you've got the other things that are hard to measure, like lost customer loyalty, employee frustration, or dissatisfaction. So these are all below the waterline, and they can make up an additional 35% of sales revenue. And so when you really think about the opportunity, there's huge opportunities. This is one of the reasons why Jack Welch decided to implement Six Sigma back in the 90s, because of the opportunity, the cost of poor quality that was happening. So I'm going to expand on that just a little bit more for us to kind of understand really what the cost of poor quality means. And so there's money we spend to try to prevent issues. So prevention costs is also part of cost of poor quality. Prevention, or things we do to appraise things in the process, whether it's inspection or audits or calibration. But both of these are proactive. We're we're training our people or certifying people to do jobs a certain way, or we're doing some sort of maintenance or housekeeping to a product or a process. These are all examples of being proactive. Things money we're spending to try to make sure that cost is, quality is okay. And this is actually where Lean Six Sigma may come in, a quality training or quality planning, those kinds of things. So these things are the things we try to do to be proactive. Then we have internal failures and external failures. Now this is when, like I said, when things get away from us and now something breaks, right? We have some repair internally, or some rework or scrap, or again, things we're doing to expedite the process or to fix things that didn't come out right. Those are what we call internal failures. They don't reach the customer. And then we have the external failures, the last category here. And those are the most painful because customers are now affected. It costs more money to fix it. You're exposed. There's a lot of other people that are now affected by that. And so that is, in a nutshell, the left-hand side, those are really more preventative, where the right, it's sort of like now you got to fix the errors because they happened, whether they're internal or external. And so that's ultimately the different costs of poor quality. And the scary part is that these are not, they are not equal in terms of price. What I mean by that is, it costs you $1 to prevent something, in prevention. For every $1 we spend in prevention, it will cost us $10 if we have to inspect it, $100 if we make a mistake, an internal failure, and $1,000 if it reaches the customer. And these are not set in stone. This is just conceptually what we're talking about. But the idea is that you're trying to reduce the opportunity or the occurrence of external failures. And how do you do that? You spend more money on prevention and appraisal at first, if you really want to remove external and internal failures. And so that's really one thing you could do to reduce the cost of poor quality. And if we realize that this is what's happening, so some people, they just don't want to spend the money to train their people or to invest in their people because of the expense, but you pay for it whether you train them or not. So you can either pay it now when you're training people and trying to get them to apply their skills, or you're going to pay for it anyway because external failures are going to happen more and internal failures are going to happen more. So if we think about that from a leader perspective, where do you want to invest your money? So that's an important thing leaders should consider. So let me ask you guys a question. You're going to go ahead and type this in the chat window. I'd love to hear. What would the impact be if you were able to reduce the cost of poor quality in your organization? If you're a leader or an executive, and even if you're not, what do you think would be the benefit to the organization if some of the cost of poor quality was reduced in your organization? And while we're waiting, we're going to give you time to put that in the chat window. And I was just going to ask Elizabeth, what do you think the impact might be? Do you have a story around that?
I do. I was doing a lot of work with a nonprofit childcare organization, and they were trying to better serve, their community. They had a lot of lower income families. They needed access to early childhood education, and their process improvement efforts were in place to help them grow. And I remember one project in particular, they were trying to improve the supply chain, the supply purchasing process. It was all over the board. Everyone sort of bought what they wanted and supplied the classrooms or the administrative building without really coordinating through one person. So this one person who thought she should be coordinating it started a project, and her goal was to get enough money saved that they could afford another mortgage for the organization to serve more families. And they did. That project alone allowed them to get another mortgage. So that was a really impressive project, and it also got a lot of people very engaged in these efforts because it was directly serving what the organization was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth.
Yeah. So let me give you some of what you're getting from folks. Let's see, we've got, Bettina said the impact would be less claims.
Mm-hmm.
Lamont said it would be improved quality. Cheryl said customer loyalty and feed forward. Fabian said customer and employee satisfaction. Gail said process services faster with lower cost. Greg, we've got customer satisfaction and retention with an exclamation point, which is incredibly important. Pat saying to increase staffing, ease workload, and further improve quality.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot more customer satisfaction, customer confidence, customer sat. Joan said productivity, less resources. Dieka is saying growth in business being more efficient and effective because quality will increase. So you've got a really nice spread here. More opportunities to grow the business. That's from Grace. More meaningful work for our people. That's lovely. That's a good one to end on from Carrie.
Yes, very nice. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And so, there is a bigger impact here. They tend to say executives and leaders, they focus on the bottom line, and those are the business language of executives. But ultimately, there's so many more benefits to reducing poor quality in an organization that are wonderful things. Your employees feel better working there. I mean, who loves their job, even though it's with painful processes, and it's unnecessary suffering. And that also is also applies towards customers, right? Unnecessary suffering. Why wouldn't you want to eliminate that? So there's a lot of, we do talk about efficiency, and I think I saw a comment in here earlier about efficiency and effectiveness and that question. But ultimately, you can save money and you can improve quality. Quality isn't just about money. It's about, how are we delivering something better and more effective? And so I definitely do see people focus sometimes too much on efficiency, but there is an effectiveness measure, and an effectiveness, improving effectiveness is really the key too. And so this is just the first point. This is definitely one of the reasons why organizations and executives should be implementing Lean and Six Sigma, because it's not just dollars. It's about satisfaction. It's about effectiveness. It's about improving customers, and it's improving employees. And actually, that's kind of our next reason, which is on the next slide. So thank you for sharing that. So one of the other reasons why a lot of organizations implement process improvement is to improve that customer experience. So, now look at today. If you have if you have a customer that's unhappy, before the digital day and age, which I remember, I went to high school, I didn't have a cell phone. Right? I didn't have the internet, right? So I remember my first job that I actually had an email. Never had an email before. I know I'm dating myself now. And I'm sure that some of my coworkers are like, what? You're that old? But before, when you were unhappy with something, you would go and tell 9 people was the average amount of people you would tell about an unhappy experience. Today, you're unhappy with something, you go out on Facebook and you tell 500 of your best friends, or Twitter or LinkedIn. So there's a lot more sharing. And, think about Yelp. People use Yelp because they want to hear what people have to say about restaurants or people, services of some kind. And there it is. It's all there. It's all shareable. So there's a lot of transparency now. And, why wouldn't you want to improve customer service anyway, and what the customer experience is? So there's a lot of stuff in process improvement. There's a lot of steps in Lean and Six Sigma, and there's methods and really important questions that this process poses to teams. And some of those questions really are, first of all, who is the customer? Which you would be surprised. Some people really struggle with that question. Who is the customer? Especially in government. In government, when it's not clear who really is paying for something, who is the customer? Because often processes in government are designed for stakeholders, not necessarily customers. And so they really struggle sometimes who the customer is because they're listening to stakeholders a lot. So we get really clear with questions like, who is the customer of this process? What do they require? Are we measuring our performance against what customers require? And finally, well, what are you going to do to close the gap if you actually measure yourself and you find out that you're not delivering what customers want? Maybe you have long lead time, or maybe you have a lot of more defects than you thought. What are you going to do about it? So those are some key questions that Lean Six Sigma will ask around the customer experience. And who wouldn't want their organization and the people in their organization asking those questions? So we do that by gathering and analyze the voice of the customer. We actually walk processes where the thing in the process, and a lot of times that thing might be a patient or it might be an application that's representative of a customer. So these are all things that we get more and more focused on, that Lean and process improvement and Six Sigma methods really support. And then we also, and this is something that not only executives love, but people love, is that we get measures around what customers care about. How long is something taking? How accurate is it? Is this the quality that our customers want? And so it's the right questions. They really are some of the right questions. So that's really an important piece that that Lean Six Sigma can do for organizations. And then we have strengthening the organization. So this is really, I think, a big piece of it is Lean Six Sigma. A lot of people think, oh, it's so much work, it's so much effort, it's so much money, we don't want to do it. But think about what it can do for an organization when you implement something like Lean Six Sigma. And these are some of the things that it can do. It helps to achieve strategic goals. And I think that's a big miss. Most people don't make that connection, but it absolutely does help achieve strategic goals. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It helps build agile organizations. There's so much change happening in organizations. And how do you keep up with your competitors? And how do you adjust to changes? Maybe there's different codes happening, or maybe there's different policies occurring. How do you make adjustments to that in a timely fashion? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And somewhat related is building problem solvers. So these are definitely some of the things that Lean Six Sigma can do to strengthen the organization. So let's start with strategic goals. So strategic goals are, most organizations have some plan, I hope, for where they're headed in the form of strategic goals and or annual goals. And these are at a very high level, some of the things you see at that level. Sometimes you have people say, we gotta be more excellent. We have to be excellent in our service delivery, and that's a strategic goal. And then what are we gonna do this year to do that? Or their goal is to improve their client experience or be more efficient in how they operate, or maybe it's developing their people. So these are, in some form or another, when you look at an organization's strategic goals and or annual goals, there's some messaging around these typically. Obviously more specific, right? So as you get moved from strategic to tactical, they get more and more specific. But usually you see these larger goals that are happening. And so I'm going to show you an example. So this is actually the goals from an LA County. LA County, this is the Register Recorder County Clerk. And I actually love this. They actually spent a lot of time trying to simplify what their goals were. And they came up with this, and they were sharing this across the company. So their goals are customer service, operational enhancement, fiscal responsibility, and staff development. And these are great. These are wonderful. And then you have the goals down here for 1, 2, and 3, LA County goals and RRCC. So what they're showing is they are looking at LA County goals, the larger group, the larger LA County, and for their department, they have specific goals. So they're showing that there's alignment there, which is wonderful. But when you look at these goals, which of these could be supported by Lean Six Sigma? Can customer service be supported by Lean Six Sigma? Can staff development? What about fiscal responsibility or operational enhancement? So to me, when I look at this, these are wonderful guides for selecting projects and for selecting some of the things that you want to make in terms of improvement. And so I love these because they're broad, and no matter where you are, which department you're in at the Register Recorder County Clerk, you can decide, okay, how are we going to improve customer service? How are we going to contribute to that goal? And Lean Six Sigma can help contribute to all of these goals. And so I think people miss that. And I just wanted to share a story. So I was working with an organization, and there was one of the directors that actually reported into the number one person. He was not engaged. And so they were doing process improvement. They'd been doing it for a number of years. And his group in particular, he was responsible in overseeing IT for the entire organization. They were not very active. He wasn't promoting it. He wasn't encouraging people to do projects, those kinds of things. So I had met with him one-on-one, and he said to me, look, I'm going to be candid with you. This Lean Six Sigma stuff, it's not a priority for me. I've got issues that need immediate attention, and my primary focus this year is to really focus on our overall IT response time, because we've got to fix why it's taking so long for the IT tickets to respond in infrastructure projects. And I looked at him I'm sure I looked at him like crazy eyes, because I don't understand, how is that not Lean Six Sigma? How are any of those things you just said not Lean Six Sigma? And why wouldn't you take that to help you solve those? And we began a conversation about how that is exactly the kind of problems that Lean Six Sigma can help with. He never made that connection between his goal and the cultural impact and the tactical approach that Lean Six Sigma could have. So those are some of the pieces that I think are missing at the strategic and leadership level. If they're setting these goals and they want to achieve them, the method that will help them do that is the Lean Six Sigma component if they're promoting it. So I have a question for you. So, and maybe you don't know what these are, but I just thought I would ask, what strategic or annual goals does your organization have that could be supported by Lean Six Sigma? Anybody want to put any in the chat window?
I'll keep an eye out for them. My curiosity is whether they, when people are aware of them. I don't know about you, Tracy, but I often run into people not being aware of them.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Okay. Yep, I agree. Sometimes people say, I have no idea what they are. They're not shared. And so I don't really know, which is a whole nother problem, right?
Yeah.
So I see, while I'm having you guys respond to that, I see that there's a question in the chat window. What's the difference between accuracy and quality? Because accuracy is one element of quality, isn't it? It could be, absolutely. And so a lot of it, some of these are how you define it. So, when we talk about in the measure phase, what are you measuring and what's the definition of that measure? I think that's really important. So accuracy might be, for someone, did they fill out the information that they were supposed to provide? And so that might be an important piece. Or did you get my order right? So did I get what I ordered? That's another example or definition of accuracy. And quality might mean something else. It could be, so I've heard people say, oh, well, they didn't fill out the form with very good information. As a matter of fact, half of it was incomplete. So that's bad quality, right? So you have to really, look at the process, and you have to look at what are the definitions for those things, because you're absolutely right. If you don't define it, it could be interpreted many ways. Okay.
Do you want to hear some of their
Yes,
answers?
please.
Okay, so for Carrie, it's digital transformation. For Gail, it's decreased cost per lease. Bettina said customer satisfaction. Katie said focus on scalability.
Mm-hmm.
Pat's trying to increase number of clients per business unit from 60 to 80. Lamont is continuous improvement mentality. Fabian said optimize lead time to manage incidents on changes and changes on our applications/software. Grace is looking to decrease defects and customer complaints. Tihana, optimization of inventory. Let's see, we've got reduce external areas by 25%. That's Heather. Greg, culture change from Lamont, and Bettina, 0 accidents, 100% FTQ.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good spread there.
Definitely is. And I think so wonderful that you all have some insight to a strategic or an annual goal for your organization. Because what I have found too, like you, Elizabeth, is most people know what their company does. They don't necessarily know where their company is headed, right? So, so kudos to you guys, because knowing where the organization is headed, that's typically where they come up with strategic and annual goals. And I would agree that I saw someone, I moved it, but someone on here I noticed said, well, it would be hard for me to think of something that wouldn't be supportive. It was great. Hard to imagine an organizational goal that couldn't be improved somehow with Lean Six Sigma application. I agree. That was the point of this. So absolutely. And so I don't necessarily, again, think sometimes that there's a connection there. You would think leaders would be all over this, because are they trying to achieve their strategic goals or their annual goals? Because a lot of them can benefit from it. So, and not just leaders, everybody in the organization wants to feel like they're contributing to where we're headed. And so, it feels good to know that there's a strategic or annual goal and you're contributing to that. And so that is very helpful. And I think it helps people have purpose when they come to work. So thank you for sharing. That's really helpful. And so that's kind of just putting an exclamation point on some of the reasons why an organization is strengthened, because it does help achieve these. So another piece that it does, another reason or another way that it strengthens the organization is it helps us become agile organization. So building a problem-solving organization, a culture of problem-solving, a culture that can adjust to changes more easily than they typically do or currently today. What does agile mean to you? And so, in today's world with change and information and data, so much information is so fast, and organizations need to be able to respond to it timely. I have heard people say, our organization moves slow. And that is a danger. That's a danger to the organization. And so how do we actually become more agile? And so that's a really important component. And if you've got problem solvers prevalent, or if you've got a problem-solving organization, an army of problem solvers, and a culture of problem solving where people are thriving and they work together well and they collaborate well and they can adjust to these changes more easily. So, people are always, that becomes a threat to an organization when they don't move very quickly. And I don't know if I'm going to say your name right. Daika, agile to me is responding to the changes in the industry as soon and as quickly as possible with less downtime. Absolutely. I love it. You're absolutely right. And so how do you get an entire organization to do that? And I know that often when we work with cultural change and we work with process improvement in organizations, they feel like it's like turning the Titanic and it's not moving fast enough. So guess what happened to the Titanic? Everybody knows. So, so that's another reason why organizations should be implementing something like a Lean Six Sigma program, whatever you call it, operational excellence, continuous improvement, whatever it is. The thing is, you can't look at quality as an act. It has to be a habit. It has to be a cultural and an organizational habit. And creating habits in an organization a habit of problem solving and dealing with problems and process issues, that takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not just one thing. It's not a one and done. It's something that you're paying attention to every day. And that is really an important part of, and so again, somebody might say, well, that's too much work, forget it. That's terrible, but it does happen. And so, but then what's the result? You have, a rocket crashing or blowing up, those kinds of things. So that's one. And this is the last one. And this is really related to, very similar to the one we just mentioned. And that is building problem solving muscles. So this takes time. Like we said, you want to make sure people can collaborate in improving a process. I see and hear it, and I'm sure Elizabeth does too, that, there's clashing departments all the time. People that don't work well together, people that don't like each other because the process doesn't work very well. And then we have people jumping to solution all the time. We are rewarded to jump to solutions. And what Lean Six Sigma does is say, no, don't jump to solution. Think about what the problem is and what the issue is and what the root causes are. Spend some time on root causes first so that we know the solution will work. But we see it, and people always acknowledge it. Everybody's jumping to solution, and they're always training and technology. And those are expensive solutions too. I mean, if you throw technology or money or people at any problem, process problem, it's going to get better. But is that really efficient? And sometimes it's not even effective. So building problem solvers is a long-term strategy to be more agile and to achieve your organizational goals. So all of them all fit together. So here's the tough question for you. Which of these reasons that we just talked about, strengthening an organization, which of these is the most important? I'm going to launch the poll. So hold on, don't put it in the chat window. Let's go ahead and launch the poll and then answer the poll. Elizabeth, what do you think? Which of these reasons do you think are the most important?
To me, it's all about that building the problem solvers, because that's the basis of your culture, right? If you're really investing the time and living your intention to build this army of problem solvers, then you're going to have this amazing culture. So to me, that's huge.
Definitely. Yes. Good. And that's really it's sort of a pyramid, right? If you build problem solvers, you become agile organizations, and you're more likely to achieve your strategic goals and your annual goals. So definitely part of the approach. And it's a build. Okay, thank you. And it says share results. So that's what we've gotten. Can you see that? You guys are showing the poll. So 18% were A. Oh, that's supposed to be you, huh, Elizabeth?
You know what? You are also really capable of reading this stuff, but I'm going to do it for you. But 82% agreed at C, that it's, helping to build the problem solvers. And actually 0 helps build an agile organizations. I think that's part of it, but I think if you're forced to choose, then it went between the problem solvers and achieving a strategic goals. That was number 1 at 18%. So it's the 80-20 rule.
Yep, definitely. Thank you for sharing. And agile organizations are important, but they are, depending on the organization too, or the industry, right? So, there might be a demand to be very, very agile, So for example, we've had some exposure to the now becoming legal cannabis industry, and there was a supplier. They supplied basically things to put your marijuana in. I guess they were suppliers and manufacturers of these products, and then the code changed, the law changed on some requirements, some of the requirements of the containers, and they were able to respond really quickly to that. Because they were fairly agile. So there might be industries that agility is more important, depending on what, the maturity of the organization. Okay, so these are, just as a summary, we just talked about some of the biggest reasons why organizations implement Lean Six Sigma. These are not even the whole list. These are just the ones that we chose to talk about today in the hour that we have. And so I want to also just take some time to talk about some of these missteps, because the organization that Elizabeth and I are in, people call us and they ask us, can I use Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma for this and that and this and that? So we've seen some missteps that unfortunately leaders and or executives have done as well. So I just want to share some of those because if you're thinking about doing Lean Six Sigma in this way, I think twice. So some of the missteps here would be, okay, hold on a second because it's not working for me here. There we go. So headcount strategy, heavy focus on hard dollars, and doing it quick as an example. So these are the missteps that I've heard over and over and over again from people that are maybe thinking about implementing Lean Six Sigma. So the first one is the most deadly, let's just say. It's when leaders have this idea that they're going to implement Lean Six Sigma to get rid of employees. It's less employees are needed. LEAN, that's the mistake. People think Lean stands for less employees are needed, and that is absolutely not true. So if you're gonna get rid of people, what do you need Lean to do it for? Just do it. If that's what it's gonna come down to, why do you need an excuse? And why are you going to use Lean in the way that it's not intended if you're just gonna get rid of people anyway? So we've had people call us to say, literally, is this, reducing headcounts our mission? And so you need to call somebody else, right? That's not what this is for. That is not what it's designed to do. What Lean and Six Sigma do is it actually focuses on the waste employees have to deal with every day. And it focuses on trying to get rid of that waste, trying to eliminate it. The most valuable asset any organization has is its people, yet we waste our people's time and energy and resources on steps that don't add value, that they're excessive steps in processing, and we're just wasting their time dealing with these kinds of processes. So that's really what we're after. Is we're not about eliminating people. That's not the point of Lean and Six Sigma. It's about eliminating waste and inefficiencies that suck up time of our most valuable asset, the people. So why wouldn't you want to make work better, easier, and faster for the most valuable asset in your organization? So that's really why you would implement Lean and Six Sigma, process improvement. It's not about getting rid of people. So that's the one that comes up over and over again, and it's really unfortunate. The next one is that they're thinking about doing it and they really end up focusing too much on the dollars behind it, right? So yes, we want to, like the cost of poor quality, okay? So sometimes people focus on it too much, and money can often cost too much, as we've talked about. You focus too much on the money part of process improvement, and you're going to miss out on the other benefits of process improvement, like employee engagement, employee empowerment, streamlining processes, reducing pain for employees. There's so many other benefits. And if you only focus on certain kinds of projects that are going to deliver a hard dollar savings too early, it's going to send the wrong message, number one, and it might get in the way of momentum. So that's that can be problematic. And I see, like for example, I've had some organizations say, okay, well, if you go through black belt training, you have to save $200,000. These people are in training, right? So, that's a lot of pressure. So what is the point of the training? Is it the point to save the money, or do you want them to actually learn something and apply it? Because I would see stuff getting passed off as a black belt project because it saved money when it really wasn't a black belt project. It really didn't go through DMAIC or root cause analysis. So focusing too much on that piece by itself can sometimes have unintended consequences. And, there's some hard dollar savings examples in here, and then there's soft dollar savings. And, what I'm finding is there's a lot of soft dollar savings in projects, reducing time it takes to do something. Sometimes that means you're reducing labor hours. These are soft dollars, which are great. Sometimes you're reducing downtime, or you're having some sort of productivity gain. And that's where I'm seeing the benefit. And the hard dollars come. Eventually they come with it. And the third misstep is that we're not spending time implementing this program to really see it be successful. So that's the other issue is, I've heard and seen organizations, spend a year to train people and see what happened. or even 2 years. And then they're like, nah, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. What happened, right? They didn't really spend the time to grow this muscle in the organization. You can't just expect that it's going to grow and just take off. And then the other problem is, here's the other big problem I see is they wanted to take over the organization and they have one person that's available to help people build their problem-solving muscle. I'm working with an organization right now that is 4,000 people. They have one black belt. How are you going to get anything done with limited resources like that when you've got one black belt to help 4,000 people? So that's the other problem is we're not spending the time and we're not making the investment to do it right. So those are the missteps. So again, we don't cover what Lean Six Sigma is, but if you want to learn more about Lean Six Sigma, what you want to do is you want to watch this webinar, Introduction to Lean Six Sigma. It's on our website for free. And so what we've covered today is really what is Lean Six Sigma in a nutshell, and from a leader perspective, why should organizations implement Lean Six Sigma? We talked about the cost of poor quality. We talked about myths and missteps. We talked about strengthening the organization and building problem solvers. So now if you have any questions, go ahead and answer any questions in the question window. And while you are doing that, I am going to just cover a couple other things. So if you are interested in getting some training, that's what we do. And we've got white, yellow, green, black, and lean. And right now our black belt training does include one-on-one coaching. So we want you to be successful. We want you to apply it to a real process. And we're providing coaching as a result of that because we want people to get help if they're doing this for the first time, especially for a black belt. So that's some of our training. You get a coupon code of 20 POWER for you coming to this webinar. So that's 20 POWER. We also have the Problem Solvers Toolkit. So this is a book that's available that can help. It's a surprisingly simple guide to your Lean Six Sigma journey. I like that because it's true. It's surprisingly simple. And so you can pick that up on Amazon.com. We also have the forum that's available, our Go-Getter membership. It includes a forum. You can connect with Master Black Belts. You get all the single modules for free. You get access to intermediate and advanced and leadership webinars. So all of our introductory webinars are available on our website for free all the time. But if they're intermediate or advanced or leadership, then they're available through the Go-Getter membership. And you also get some books and guides, and you get 20% off anything you want. Okay, our next webinar comes up next month. I'm going to give Elizabeth a few moments to explain and share what she's going to be covering.
This is a webinar that's going to be an introduction to standard work. I think there's a joke running about standard work being compared to the Dewey Decimal System in terms of interest, but actually this webinar will be interesting, and we'll give you examples of what do we mean, how do you put it into practice, why is it so essential for Lean Six Sigma to have standard work. And the basic line is, if you don't have a standard, you can't improve. But this will take it, as we usually do, from a nice beginner perspective. So if you got folks you want to learn about that, send them along.
Wonderful. And then don't forget to check out our Just-in-Time Cafe podcast, where we interview Billy Taylor. He is the Global Head for Diversity and Inclusion at Goodyear. He's awesome. He's really great to talk with. He's a public speaker in the Lean Six Sigma community. He does a wonderful job energizing people. So don't miss that interview. We also talk about Katie Anderson's Japan study tour. And so that was really fun. Elizabeth and I just went in May, and we talk about the tour. And if you're interested in maybe going to Japan, it's a great trip. We also have a success story out, reducing procurement lead time by 20 days. And that's by Kara Cuzzetto in King County. It was a project that took a long time, over a year to complete. And this was the second attempt that they did. And it was an additional 20 days. Before the 171 days, it was 300 something days. So that was huge. And she was just continuing to continuously improve the process. Okay, so do we have any questions?
Well, you've got a minute, but Bettina has a nice one. And if we don't get to finish this or get it in as much as you want to answer it, Tracy, we can do it on the forum afterward. But she said, what do you advise in order to implement Lean Six Sigma culture in a company of over 300 workers?
So that is a great question. And I'm going to give the standard consultant answer, which is it depends, because it's actually true. The first step, anytime you want to implement process improvement or Lean Six Sigma in an organization, and it's really maybe the first time, or maybe it's the second time or third time, we really need to do an assessment of what would be the best strategy to do that. So it's really a lot of inputs in terms of, well, what has happened in, what's the reason why they want to do it now, first of all? What have they been exposed to this before? Culturally, what happened if they were exposed to this? And so there's a lot of different considerations in my opinion that have to be very thoughtful in order to know if it's going to work, because culture is not cookie cutter. Every company has their own culture, and just saying, do this, and do this, it may not work for your organization, even though it worked really great for somebody else's. So I hope that helps. It really is something you really want to be thoughtful about, because you don't want to fail. And if we don't have the right approach there, we have a lower chance of success.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tracy.
All right. So thanks for joining us today. If you have any more questions, just ask us at contact@golean6sigma.com. Don't forget to download any of our templates and tools and come visit us on our website, or we'll see you in the Go Getter Forum. Have a great day.